So there are a number of population level factors that kind of sit underneath the calculation of this very synthetic measure of the total fertility rate. But as you so rightly say, there's a whole suite of socioeconomic factors, a very complex set here that really we need to be talking about. And indeed, if we consider these figures, no surprise, but they're still quite shocking because we knew it was coming. I think to some degree, many of us didn't really realise it would get to this point this soon. But certainly it feels a bit like we've hit rock bottom. Not because we've got nowhere further to fall. Certainly, I suspect we can fall further, but it feels like we're at this crossroads, where if we don't act now, we're in terrible strife.
Okay, so we are at the lowest level on this measure since 1935, I think it was. You're saying that we might bottom out. So what would cause a turnaround?
So as you say, this is the first time we've seen this level of total fertility rate outside of wartime or Great Depression. And so what really is happening here is a whole suite of things, but mainly let's call them procreating policies, if we will. The first one is housing affordability. The next one is economic security, and then gender inequality, and then of course climate change. These four broad policy domains are weighing heavily on young people in particular. They're certainly at front of mind. And what we're seeing over time, it's not that people, particularly young people, are saying we want fewer kids. Not necessarily. In fact, the young people are really seeing that they're readjusting as life goes on because life gets in the way. The barriers to achieving a much desired child or a subsequent child, they're just insurmountable. And that's quite grim because it means that we've lost hope in tomorrow.
Okay, so it's more of a subconscious loss of confidence in, the outlook for well-being and a comfortable, happy life. Rather, are you suggesting, Liz Allen, than deliberate decisions about attempting to make a baby?
Certainly, I think there are elements of both. There are those decisions that are deliberate, climate inferno. I don't want children growing up in hell, really, for young people. That's what's being said. So many are taking a very deliberate, conscious decision to delay or just put off entirely having children. And that's, I think, in response to a fear that there is a policy inaction across this range of circumstances. But really, when we ask people, how many children do you want to have? That's a whole other figure when we look at, well, how many do people actually have? And therein lies the human catastrophe.
Okay, just elaborate on that. What is the want to have answer?
Yeah, so when in surveys, for example, and we've seen this over time, young people and Australians generally, we ask, how many children would you like to have? Then when we look at the life course, the completed life course of fertility, demographically, we see that that's not come to fruition. So it's not like we've seen this drastic drop in the last couple of years of the intended or desired number of children. It's just that we're not able to see these life wishes accomplished.
I understand. All right, Liz, so we're seeing fewer babies overall. We're also seeing mothers waiting longer to have them with reproductive choices, maybe a role for technology there too. Would we get to a point, or will we get to a point where they balance out? That is to say, where there's an increase in the late 30s, early 40s rates of fertility, enough to offset the decline in births for women who traditionally carried the load, for the nation that is, in their 20s?
Look, this is a great question. And certainly, if we look at what's known as the age specific fertility rates for the period, that we can see that we've seen drops across the board. The only place we haven't seen a drop is at in the older age category up until the end of biological fecundity. But does not mean that we're going to see that compensation or that shifting. So in other words, this is happening across the board. Certainly, we've seen over time delaying having children, the onset of relationship formation and so on. But that generally means that we constrain the time that we can biologically have a child, or even with the assistance of technology. So the older we are at commencing having children, the fewer we are to have over our life course, if we're able to have any at all. And so then we have this issue of childlessness, not by choice.
All right, so we've discussed the element of personal choice involved in this, Liz Allen, influenced, directly or indirectly about confidence in the future and to some degree government policy making. But if you had to put your finger on a policy setting that government could influence to reverse this current decline, the fertility trend, what would be the most powerful one?
So the most powerful one is actually budget neutral, and it's about language, it's about leadership, and it's about allaying fears of tomorrow. Deep within these fears of having and not having the children that are so desired is this fear that there is no hope for the future and that tomorrow is not secure, it's not guaranteed. We can turn that around really quickly. And I call on political leaders and those in a position of power and to commentate on these things is we need to restore hope. And in that, the rest can follow. Then the policy levers of, say, for example, housing and those fundamental rights of being a human, housing, secure housing and secure employment.